It's so good to see you. I think you might be on mute, but
Yes.
hello and welcome to another episode of the Environmental Answers podcast, where we bring you what's what as far as clarity in the environmental industry. Today, we are joined by someone whose work sits beautifully at the interconnection of culture, community, and ancestral wisdom. Is Brittney. Hey, Brittney, how are you doing today?
Hello, Tiana. I am just grateful and blessed to be here. How are you?
I'm doing well, as one of my good friends likes to say, it's another day in paradise. And,
Yes,
we get to enjoy another day under the sun.
yes,
So, I'm really excited to have you come on, especially during this time where I see it's like harvest time, people are eating, coming together, really breaking it down. So I was hoping one, you could give everyone who's listening in and may not know you just like an introduction to who you are and what you're about.
yes. Hello, everyone. Like I said, honored to be here with Tiana and the Environmental Answers family, as well as all of you. I am Brittney Shelby Sessoms, the youngest big mama or Madia that you will ever meet at the corner of Charlotte and Pickens. I'm the founding executive director of Charlotte and Pickens, which is the literal streets that my grandmothers grew up on. One being Charlotte Pickens here in Memphis, Tennessee, in a neighborhood called Walker Homes, where she had an urban farm. And then also Pickens Road in Tipton County or Mason, Tennessee, where my father's side had a large farm that was inherited from my fourth generation great grandfather, who died a prosperous farmer before the end of slavery. And so a lot of my work, it has been in especially the cultural preservation around land, food, herbalism, cooking, plant medicine, and root work, spirituality, Black culture as a whole in those ways. But particularly focusing on land, food, beverage, culinary culture to remediate food to address. I'm sorry, food sovereignty. Well, address food access through food sovereignty of Black Southern cultural technologies, which does look like growing food, remedying soil, making herbal medicine, cooking meals from scratch, sewing our own clothes, and those different things. With purpose to recreate infrastructure that is going to steward our economic well-being and wealth building.
I like to also add in is fundamental to sustainability and environmental answers. Because honestly, everything you said, is what we know to do, but what we kind of well away from, right? And
Yes.
so, what I love about your work, one, let's start with the fact that you talked about a fourth generation ancestor, right? Being able to have that knowledge is so empowering. Wouldn't you say? Like, because, and like for me at least, I got goosebumps because I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, and then I didn't know it was named after your business was named after both of your grandparents. So being able to both of your grandmothers specifically to be able to uplift that, how does that make you feel? Like when you think about it?
It makes me feel honored, and especially that people receive it, because I'm just an old soul. It's nothing I can do. But when I talk to elders and they're like, where did you learn this from? And it just kind of reminds me that so many of us have forgotten. And I'm grateful to be, someone who does still have those skills of, canning and preserving and growing and cooking slow and low, So it's definitely an honor to be able to pass it on. But what I've learned is that it's so rare, we must begin to pay it back forward so that we're able to regenerate the knowledge during these, especially these times right now, which we are like probably being forced to remember. So
Mhm.
I'm grateful that I have them to share forward, especially for our well being.
Yeah, no. When I was thinking about when we were thinking about the name for your episode, harvesting with cultural memory. I'm thinking about like I have a little garden box that I started with my son. It's a community garden, and I think about you and the work that you're doing, and how important it is to know how to still grow and like plant seeds. Something that like our grandparents were doing as part of their everyday living. We have gotten so far away from that. I know that some of the people that tune into the Environmental Answers podcast, they may have gardens, and if they are, what would you say is something that you might recommend they consider planting? I know that you know a lot more about that.
Yes. Well, a lot of people think that it stops when it's hot outside, and it doesn't. It actually goes all year round. Food sovereignty goes all year round. So right now, you should be planting your greens, your collard greens, your turnip greens, your cabbage, your broccoli, all of your those are cool weather crops, lettuces for salad, spinach, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, all of those staples. are good for now. They can handle really cold weather, even up to frost. And we know that during the wintertime, you can, have low tunnels, high tunnels, which are things that kind of extend your growing season to protect your crop from very low temperatures like frost and things like that. But they also retain moisture so that you don't have to be out in the cold gardening every day in this cold weather. But especially now, you mentioned when we first began that this is harvest season. So while we've just come out of growing tomatoes and peppers and watermelon and beans and things like that, potatoes, it's now time to can and preserve through the next season. So tomato jam, jelly,
all the good stuff.
yes,
When I'm listening to you, I feel like
pepper.
I hear the what is it, the ancestral knowledge, like how it's functioning through the work that you already know to do. One of the questions I had was, or was sent over to us, is how do you see ancestral knowledge functioning as a living technology for solving some of our modern food problems and environmental challenges? What would you say to that question?
Well, the number one problem I have with this broken food system is that it has, in my opinion, put so many of us out. And so you think about our legacy and our place as it relates to food or cultivating this land, and how much, food has done, or agriculture has done, from growing sugarcane, tobacco, rye, rice, and those things like that, on up to pharmaceuticals and, mattress, apparel, like all of these different industries. So when you look at food particularly, there's like, a certain amount of us that cannot afford fresh, nutrient dense, culturally relevant food. And then you look at practices like redlining, where that made grocers not want to invest in our neighborhoods. And so knowing that access to food, like people call it a food desert, but it's actually not a desert, which is a natural occurring phenomenon. This is like something that is law, that is intentional, and that is apartheid. And so knowing that grocery and things like that, or food, has been something that they try to keep us away from, but we actually are the reason for it in this country, is my particular problem. And so the technologies of growing, cooking, making, canning, disaster relief, like all of these things kind of creates a certain level of sovereignty, which says that the people in the community get to, if you look at the food process of growing, harvesting, processing, packaging, distributing, and all those things, it's putting that back into our own hands and creating this local infrastructure. For instance, we have the Black Farmers Market here in a food desert because we have a big transportation problem. We know that food apartheid says, well, there's not a grocer that is walkable near you, that is a full service grocer. And so if you look at food access, you're like, well, how do we even solve food instability or food insecurity through what we're doing now? Food drives, supply drives, which I don't know if y'all seen what's inside these boxes. We're grateful for them, but they probably can feed most families for about a day or two. But when you look at growing food, cooking food, succession planting, so I'm going to start some collard greens today, and as those grow and I pick off of them, I'm going to set some more seeds out in about 3 weeks, because these are very fast growing. And so I end up now, lessening my dependency on the grocery system as we know it today, and putting that power back in my hand. And then if I add livestock to that, chickens, cattle, things like that, now I don't even need the grocer. Like literally a half a cow could feed you a half a year. You get what I'm saying? And so for me, it's important for these ancient or traditional technologies to rid food insecurity as we know it today and create the local food system. So bartering with one another, growing on our land, bartering with one another, selling at local markets, shopping with local food entrepreneurs, growers, things like that, canning our own food, selling those things, making those value-added products, which is the packaging part, right? The distribution part, community kitchens, because, well, you start to scale up and you can't make that in your house. Why? Because it has a temperature control. And so those are the things that I think for modern times are still needed. And if you just think about all of that and getting back to the skill, one of the key things is going to have to be education, because so many of us have lost it, which is kind of the lane I lean into. And I guess the innovation in that, because we have such an apathy to like land, to cooking, to sewing, like all of this slow living that we used to do, or this hard labor that had like slow ROI, you kind of have to engage our people in a way that is also culturally relevant. So pulling in the other art forms, music, poetry, things like that, to kind of gain the interest. Then teaching the education, and then giving that it's time to transform.
No, that's really clear, and I really appreciate that full definition or breaking down of an answer, because when I'm sitting here, I'm thinking about how do you get the people to come, right? Because like what you're asking maybe someone to do, like starting to, it does require you to have time, right? And not everybody who's like hustling and bustling, trying to maybe get food on the table thinks that, oh, okay, I need to set up a system to like plant, every so quick, like, and I think something else that I was talking about or had mentioned was like the importance of like farmers markets, and also being able to lean into your farming community as like a pathway as well. Because like it seems like, I know for me, I talked to you about the garden box moments ago, but like I'm not even that good about going there every week, right? It's like not right there. And then when I had one in my backyard, it got grown over, and then my husband was like, let's take this out, because I wasn't using it, right? And so therefore it's kind
But
of
even
like,
that is compost. You know what I mean?
right,
Like, it's not
okay.
an opportunity to just throw stuff away. That's like,
Okay,
okay,
compost, that's the
yeah,
solution.
it's compost, and then that decomposes, it breaks down, and then I refeed the soil. So
Okay.
that's a good thing. Like, there really is like no waste on the food part, right? You make
Uh-huh.
one thing, but it can go back and continue to feed new life, and it goes to seed. Like, you literally can purposely let some of it die, so
Yeah.
that you can get more seeds from it, because literally one plant will give you like tons of seed.
I know the
So
tomatoes have taken over. That was the tomato situation that got a little gnarly. But I guess like
gotta get
when
back
I'm
to it.
creating, look, like I love how you're into it. Like we have a solution for the problems, right? The solution is you can compost, like because that's something that didn't immediately come to my mind. But like how you were like, oh Tiana, that's a composting solution. You can turn that into that for you. And then when I was listening to you earlier about jarring or canning, I know that I think one of my friends were talking about you have to like burp it if you put like pickles in a jar so it doesn't blow up. I
Yeah.
don't know. It's like in my mind, when I think about that, I don't know how that makes other people feel. It made me a little nervous because I'm like, oh, wait, I need to slow down and be able to pay attention. Do you see that as like a real problem for people? Like if they get into like trying to start these activities?
Yeah, because of the society we live in, right?
Mhm.
Like, that's one of the reasons they got us. Like, okay, so you think about back then, like, who was actually doing these things? Well, most of the men or the brothers were doing the growing, and then most of the sisters or the women were inside of the house doing all of this processing, cooking, canning, or whatever. And so you give women access to work, and then there's the Great Migration, and people move to like steel houses or go up the Corn Belt in the Midwest and then the North. And so, yes, now they don't have time because you've changed where the plantation is. It's now indoors. And so then we're encouraged to go indoors. And then we're, this thought of, even though you have the heart to plant, so many of us just have apathy. Like, I ain't doing all that work. It's too much work. I'm not even going to attempt. So we applaud you for even trying. You know what I mean? But like, no. So society doesn't make it where we can do those things. I mean, we send our children away for 8 hours. We got to go to work for 8 hours. We go to work. We literally still don't make enough. Even those of us who are working, we are like 2 paychecks or something like
Yeah.
away from hunger, houselessness, and hopelessness ourselves. And so, I mean, it's just like all of us. You just, you make time for it. The good thing about it is you can't water during the daytime anyway. So you hit it with a little water, fertilizer, or food, natural fertilizer. We don't want to kill the environment. But you hit it with a little bit of that before the sun goes up, before you come back home. And in the evening, in those summer months, you tend to it then too. But, there are ways to where, we never should have been out there 9 hours a day in the hot sun harvesting bags and bags of cotton. And so that vision is traumatic. And so that's how we kind of see this thing right now, even if we are like you who is trying, you know what I mean? So yeah,
No, I hear
society
what you're
does
saying.
that.
Because like people have this perception that like, oh, okay, farming. What does farming look like? Farming looks like going out there, really struggling in the field. I don't know, like that's the best way I can think to put it. And then like really it can be simple. I know that like I have seen people have like little like containers even on their apartment like porch or deck area, and that being like a pathway to starting to what I think you heard said earlier is not being as dependent on the grocery. Cuz like I know I don't want people to like leave the episode thinking that grocery stores are exclusively bad, but like they do keep you in a dependent state, right? Like they keep it so that you aren't aware of like one where your food is coming from and there's a disconnect there, and then how to get that food. If someone was like in the situation of trying to just, I know you said earlier when I asked about what to plant, you talked to me about greens, but like if there's something they could just start with, like one thing that people, so they don't feel like it's overwhelming. I know that like it can feel overwhelming, like all the options and opportunity. What would you recommend to them to try?
Oh, first, seasonally, I'll say the easiest thing, just hands down, of course, not right now, but herbs. When the spring breaks next year, plant a little mint. It's going. You want something to grow. You think you ain't got a green thumb, honey? You can't kill that. It's gonna grow and grow and grow. But definitely herbs, mint, rosemary, things like that. And right now, in particular, lettuces. You don't even have to get into the collards and the cabbages if you don't want to. But lettuce is very giving. It grows very fast, and you can harvest in about 3 weeks. You can grow it in a bucket, even in the springtime or when the summer months come. You can grow tomatoes in a bucket. And the reason why is because they are very resilient. Most of the time, I'm saying those first because they're very resilient. And you may slip up sometimes. You don't have the dedication to get out there, in the morning or in the evening. But most of the time, they'll make it. You know what I mean? And you'll see that. I mean, one tomato has like over 30 something seeds in it, which every seed gives you one plant that gives you like tons more tomatoes. And so definitely that, to not get discouraged. But yes, in apartment, in a rooftop, you absolutely can grow in a bucket, a 5-gallon bucket, which a lot of the companies are food grade. They sit them out. They don't want them anymore. Dump trucks come get them. You could drill holes in the bottom of them, and at least 2 tomato plants will fit in one 5-gallon bucket.
Oh, that's really good. So getting back to some of my more scripted questions, one
Okay.
of the questions I had was you're both a preservationist and innovator. You do this by balancing, the past and the present, and even creating things for future generations. So if I'm a younger person, what advice would you give to me for reclaiming my cultural identity, especially when it relates to food or in general? Because that's something that I think you've done so eloquently.
Mhm. Well, number one, I think that you know our young people today really value the dollar, right? The value of a dollar. And I think that even though I don't know if where you're from, they're calling them like YNs. We've committed ourselves in Memphis to calling them youngins again, which is a very kind of old word. Get away from the YNs because one of the things that I've personally began to notice is they have a divine warrior energy. And so whether that's a female or a male, I noticed that they are all about their dollar, making the money, whether it's honestly or doing something dishonestly. But kind of getting us to see the mental trip in like that every they taught us like kind of that money doesn't grow on trees, but it kind of actually does, and here's why or here's how, to kind of garner and capture some interest. But I think that land ownership in this country is a big deal, and so that's number one where the value goes back to. But I also think that we're very spiritual people, even the YNs, you know what I mean? They always talk about God, you know what I'm saying? And so knowing that land stewardship and growing is also an act of being very close to God, is another thing. And then on top of being able to get them to see how even though grocery stores aren't bad, the ability to grow this thing right in your yard literally just yields you more income in your pocket. And showing that this country was literally built off of land, cultivating crops here in this country. in all of these industries that are billion-dollar industries that we have like barely 1% in as billionaires. Like, you know what I mean? So there's no amount of hustle that we do that's going to create billionaireship for majority of us. And so getting us to kind of see that as young people, there's a lot of opportunity in tapping into culture and preserving it. And so while our matriarchs and patriarchs might be leaving, I would challenge our young folks to get with the oldest person they can in the family, see what stories they have, see what folks used to do, write them down, recipes, stories, oral history, preserve it, revisit it. One of the things that I do is I call it preserving through practice in one of our gathering series. And my husband's a DJ. And so I get him to kind of take himself on a journey of research, finding the sounds of those times, myself and my research, cooking the meals of those times to kind of expose people to those times that they've wondered about, that they've seen documentaries about, that they've been taught about, and things like that. So, you know, a lot of people, young people may not enjoy reading, but they do love experiences. And so, how can we provide a similar experiences that kind of encapsulates a time travel so that they can kind of experience the sensory of what they did, you know, our ancestors did, to kind of inform where we're heading.
No, I really like that. I also felt like inspired. It sounds like that could even be something that people do around this holiday season of like sitting down with your elder that you have, maybe even putting on music that they knew from their childhood and really like transport them, transport yourself, and like slowing down how important that is. Also, the documentation piece. I also was like, that sounds like an event. Do you host like events for people like that? Like the way in which you described it,
Yeah, I
maybe
do.
like let's uplift the fact that you create that because you created it for me right now. I was like, I feel like I'm going there.
Yes, we have a keep gathering series. I
Uh-huh.
piloted it at our home because my home is very old. It's like 1902. It gives very much
Wow.
so. It gives like Eve's Bayou, the party they had that night kind of vibes. Is that kind of wood looking place.
Okay.
And so the first pilot was keep the juke. And so talking about how, you know, after cultivating the fields, how they would, you know, come into the juke joints and garages and places like that to be able to be free from, you know, white folks, to drink, to gather, to laugh, to talk, to crack jokes, to play cards, you know, big wig, gin rummy, spades, all these different things, but also the things that they ate. And so again, the women in the kitchen cooking beef stew or, you know, tea cakes and things like that. What were they listening to? What were they talking about? The songs of those times. And so, yeah, I kind of read and kind of gather that information and take note of what they're eating and kind of put it on in a way. The only thing I haven't added is like, let's dress up like those times,
Oh,
which
okay.
could be a great component, you know. Um, but with that playlist playing, they can take that home. They can also experience the time, and then we also organize. So if people don't do it with their own families at their tables, we can do it here. Let's time travel. Do you remember the stories? What part of those stories are you interested in preserving? What part can you even do? Are you willing to either engage or teach someone else in our culture at least a little bit about that? And so thinking on the next one right now, actually, and on into 2026. But yes, I do provide those experiences and looking for, you know, the beyond just a playlist, engaging some of the blues artists, the jazz artists, and things like that locally who still sing these things as, yes, time travel. Because it's one thing to read about a time or watch a documentary, but then what does it feel like to experience? I think something close to what they did. So yeah.
Oh, I mean that's really awesome. I'm excited one for the things that are coming in 2026 and the just feeling the passion behind that work. Um, just so you have like preservation as part of like your purpose and mission, and I hear that from this because you're empowering people to learn about their history, whether you say that's good, bad, whatever, you know what I mean, but embrace it because it is your own. Um, One of the other questions that we saw is like people who might be struggling right now with not being able to have secure food access. Is there any recommendations for them, like where to go to maybe find food in their community? I know you said you're located in Tennessee, right?
Yeah, I'm in
So
Memphis.
like, just thinking of strategies or resources that could be helpful to people outside of those boxes that are donated, because you brought up earlier that sometimes there's not enough for more than one day.
Yeah. Um, so I've partnered twice with one corporate partner who donates water to our farmers market during the summer months. They partnered with Feed the Children, and so we were able to give out 400 boxes to families, 1,200 to individuals. And then just last week again with FedEx here, partnering with our Excel Center, where people go to get their continuing high school education if they maybe not have graduated, they can go and finish those things. We did 400 again, about 1,200 families, but the contents of the box, depending on how big or large the family is, may make one pot of spaghetti, which we know, depending on how large the family may be, just for that night, you probably can get leftovers the next day. But then there's also, like, we have a model here. Comrade of mine, LJ Abraham in Memphis, has started community fridges where there are community host sites, mostly or mainly churches, that host refrigerators, and then everybody in the community just goes to fill them up. She's got a Facebook group, and so if you see something on the manager, especially at Kroger, if you cook something, if you have something that you don't want to eat that's about to go out a few days, you just drive up to one of the refrigerators that you're near, like a donation center, you fill the fridge up, and sometimes there are people waiting there when you fill up the refrigerator to take it out immediately. You know what I mean? So it's a very scarce time. Of course, food banks are doing things. They're partnering with grocery stores. But with SNAP loss, a lot of farmers have been impacted too, because there's a lot of their contracts. And so even at the grocery store, as we are having these drives, prices are kind of going up as well. And so for me, in Tennessee, especially, people have started to get back their full. I'm sorry. Excuse me, y'all. People have started to get back their full benefits payout. And a lot of people have been calling me saying, like, well, what do we do? It's fine now. And I still think that we should continue to leverage the moment of learning and teaching and being our own mutual aid.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the places that I learned of mutual aid as just a girl growing up Southern and Black was church. A lot of people, any church, even if they weren't a member, they would walk by church and need help on phone bill, need help on light bill, need food or whatever. And so Sundays after church, fellowship hall, plates were getting handed out, things like that. And so definitely the food drives, definitely those different projects like that. But I cannot stress enough to learn to grow and learn to cook, because, for instance, beans, which is a part of a certain ancestral planting technique that gives nitrogen to the soil. Well, our foliage plants, leafy greens, collards, tomatoes, things like that, they need nitrogen. You know what I mean? And so potatoes, those are things that stick. Beans are plant protein. They have fiber in them. Something that grows native around here is pecan trees. So you put a nut and a bean together, that's a complete plant protein. You put bean and cornbread together, that's a complete plant protein. And so just remembering that, our ancestors have been in times like this several times before we have, and we just really have to go back and, like, literally remember what they did to get through such trying times. And
Oh,
maybe we made a mistake by asking for so much inclusion that we kind of got away from our culture. And I think that's what I admire about, like, immigrants who come here. They do get involved in our labor system and things like that, but I also think they really cling on to their culture more than we have been able to do.
no, that's clear. And I think that's a good point to highlight about the fact that, we take time to remember what we were doing before we were better able to take care of our bodies and also just take care of our community. Some things that you brought up that I noted, because I hadn't heard of the refrigerator, like a, what did you call it? Like it's like a
901 community fridges. Mm-hmm.
okay. So the
Like,
community fridges. That's the phrase that I was trying to get to. A community fridge. Okay.
yes, and we
I
need
think
more
of
community kitchens too.
Okay, so community kitchens are also something. I one of my goals for 2026 of the podcast is to link more resources. So like something that I'll pull together. I'm thinking about just in Raleigh where I live, but just having a place where people can drop those types of links so that people know where to go.
Mhm.
Because honestly, like it can be overwhelming. I mean, Facebook groups are helpful, but I know for me, like sometimes like getting on there, I get distracted and not know where to go. So having like neutral spaces where you can go and pull information is really critical to me. Is there a place for people in Tennessee to know where these refrigerators are, or how is that? How do people know? Or is it like okay,
You know, you share what one word gets out, somebody shares, somebody needs food. They say, "Oh, no, I don't want community fridges. Go to here's the locations and things like that."
but it
Um,
sounds like word of mouth is the strongest way.
well, it's the Facebook group. The
Sorry.
Facebook group is the
Okay.
most critical way.
Okay.
Most people who will get on there and say, "Hey, we need food" or whatever, and then they know about it, and so they get added to the group, and so
Okay.
it's become a community because somebody I might post right now and say, "Hey, dropping off this at the Tillman refrigerator."
Okay.
Somebody else might post and say, "Hey, I'm dropping this off at the Hope Street refrigerator. When I got there, it was empty. When I got there, this was in it." And so we
Okay.
just kind of update one another. It's a real community thing. Like somebody may pull up and say, "Hey, I'm about to put something in this. This was here when I got here." And they'll say these many people were waiting. So, you know, it's a community thing. In that way. And then the different churches and things, of course, they're putting out flyers. People are posting on Facebook. People are putting on the radio. Miss South Food Bank is doing drives, you know, things like that. The Feed the Children is also putting out media and press and information. And then I don't want to, um, want people to forget farmers markets. You know what I mean? Like we have one that's all year round in Cooper Young. The others are seasonal, but there are some. And then if you are somewhere where your governor chose to pay out the SNAP benefits, you definitely can often use those benefits at farmers markets. And a lot of farmers markets do like double up programs and things like that. So those are other options. But
I might need to like one repeat that one. The fact that at the farmers market they double up on the fact that
yeah,
for the corn
sometimes
some of
they'll
them do.
sometimes they'll double up the dollar. So if this is $1 and you are paying with SNAP, you know what I mean? You buy this for $1, you could double up and
Okay.
use another dollar there sometimes. And then the programs might work differently, but a lot of people don't know that they accept food stamps at farmers markets, and that helps you build relationship directly with the farmer, which also strengthens the local community food system. Um, and support smaller farms as well because like I said, big farms have a lot of contracts with government, so small farms are depending on the community and local markets to shop with them.
I earlier this year I had someone on the podcast that talked about like I guess it's the CSA. Is
Yes,
that
community
what does
supported
that stand for again? Say it again.
community supported agriculture.
Oh, community supported agriculture as a resource, I guess, for like people like participating. Do you see that as something that is accessible as well?
Yes, I do. And then there's all sorts of models. Depending on where folks are, they may have a mobile grocer. A lot of nonprofits do mobile grocer programs where they come set up. You can go in. It's like a truck, but it absolutely is a grocery store when you walk in. And yeah, I absolutely do think those are both viable options.
Thank you. I really appreciate the time that you spent with us today. Is there anything else that you would like to maybe share with our listeners as we're starting to wrap up the episode as far as when we think of harvesting with cultural memory, like what does that mean to you or any other ideas that have come in your head while we were talking?
Yes, I do want to clarify the CSA model. What it looks like is like a box, a monthly subscription, or you can pay yearly, and then it usually will entail different products from different farmers or makers. So eggs, crops, jams, jellies, pickles, um, candles, soaps, salves, laundry detergent by handmade people. Like you can make all of those different things, and they may because some of the food supply drives have also been supplies, toiletries, and things like that. And so, knowing that our ancestors made soap with fat and lye, like so that may be in a box one time, handmade. Um, just to say that. I don't know of any models that take SNAP for CSA,
Okay.
but there could be. I'm not really sure. And then as far as cultural harvesting, I think that goes beyond food. You know what I mean? I think one of the things that we need to reharvest is one another. I think a lot of our families and the places that were very strong in our community settings, we have kind of displaced ourselves from, whether we are part of the crew that is woke or conscious, you know what I mean? Or we are a part of the crew that is wounded and traumatized by different things that happen in our family, because we know that, things in life are balanced. I guess I would just invite us to kind of harvest that reconnection there first. And then we come together and we find out that we have an opportunity to serve our community and outwardly through our families. And then reclamation, like let's reclaim the land, let's reclaim our, like, to me, there's no reason why we're hungry. We are literally the stewards of the land, the cultivators of the land, resourceful and very resilient people. And so I think that we should be cultivating that remembrance and harvesting active reclamation for sure. So kind of symbolic on that, but also literal and physical as well.
That's beautiful and inspiring. I really, really appreciate that. The last thing is, we really, really enjoyed having you on this episode of the Environmental Answers podcast. We want to, one, let you know that the work that you do is critical to the environmental industry, environmental, like everything. Sometimes people leave and don't see their place. I know your place is here, but I want you to remember that we appreciate what you're doing. It's inspiring for future generations and generations to come. So thank you, Brittney, for being here and sharing your story and your truth and your work with us. How
Yeah.
best do we stay connected with you? Is there a way we should follow you? What is it that you would like for us to do?
Yes. Well, thank you so much for that affirmation and confirmation of my life's work. Thank you and your platform for the work you do for the environment, and especially for leveraging our stories and the work that we do within our community, so that we do know about one another, and so that we do know that there are those of us who still care and who are very much so committed to the well-being of us collectively. You can find me on Instagram, y'all. I said I was a young big mama, my dear that you're ever meeting. I'm for real. There's not a whole lot on my Instagram, my Facebook, and my social channels. I am committing to doing a little bit better. But one of the things that I would have you know is that I'm really big on keeping things off of social media, because I just think in this time, like if you think about what our ancestors did, I don't think they were going up in the woods for school for a reason. So I'm really careful about putting everything that we do to experience ourselves in the internet streets. But I am committed to telling more stories and showing up a little bit more. So that is Charlotte and Pickens, at Charlotte and Pickens. Charlotte like Charlotte's Web, no S, AND spelled all the way out, because social media doesn't allow for an ampersand, and Pickens, Pickens. That's on Facebook and Instagram. And then my website is charlotteandpickens.com. You can go there, charlotteandpickens.com/CP links. If you follow that link, it'll take you like to our link tree kind of sort of thing. And you have an array of choices. You can, send an email, you can make a phone call, you can make a donation to our nonprofit side, you can shop herbal products on our for-profit side, you can stay in touch, join the newsletter, which will be starting back up. Yeah, so thank you, Tiana.
Thank you. And thank you for those who were able to join in and listen to another episode of the Environmental Answers podcast. We're bringing you clarity on what's what in the environmental industry. We really appreciate you listening today. Until next time, stay well.
Yes, stay well. Peace.